And I'd like to call the last paper of the session David Vernon, and the title of his presentation is Exploring the Relationship Between Sensory Processing Sensitivity and Dream Precognition.
Okay, so good morning. Exploring the relationship between sensory processing sensitivity and dream precognition. I'll probably use the word sensitivity because sensory processing sensitivity is just too much of a mouthful to keep saying over and over again. This is a collaborative study with Liz from Canterbury and Malcolm from Derby, so thanks to both of those guys for collaborating on this. I have a foot in both camps there, so it's a bit of fun. So precognition, most of you probably know what precognition is, this notion that you can obtain information from the future, or information from the future may retroactively influence your behavior now. There are a number of ways we can measure this, etc. And dreams are particularly useful or convenient because dreams provide this natural altered state of consciousness that we enter into every night. I was thinking about this last night as well. I was thinking like we've had, our participants here have 20 plus years experience of dreaming. They do it every night. So it's something that sort of taps into that idea and the notion that dreams naturally reduce the level of sensory processing, almost as if they reduce the field of consciousness, similar to some extent to what you see in the Ganzfeld. But it doesn't require any induction or any sort of training. People just naturally do this. So it's a very convenient way, and it's thought to be a facilitator for psi experiences, because with that reduced sensory sort of experience, if you like, or sensory noise, that weaker, if it is, or low-level psi signal may emerge through into their dreams. And the idea with the precognition is that the target would find itself embedded within their dream imagery. Okay? And alongside that, precognitive dreams are reasonably commonly reported. Between 40–50%, depending on who you ask, report some aspects of precognitive dreams. Unfortunately, or not, whatever, the evidence for precognitive dreaming is inconsistent. Some people haven't been able to elicit or find these effects. Others have. A recent meta-analysis which looked at dreaming, amongst others, it looked at dream ESP research, really. But it concluded that this type of research is genuine. There is a genuine effect there. But interestingly, it's not governed by things like the experimenter, the need to monitor REM sleep, which is very important, the type of, or the number of target choices, which is also interesting. Now, there's a lot of background research here. Chris Rowe, for example, did a very, very nice summary of the research from the Maimonides labs, and most people are aware of that. That was very useful and very interesting, but logistically very intensive and very expensive, often requiring people or researchers to wake up participants during a REM phase sleep to see what they were dreaming of, etc. And we just don't have that that level of resource anymore, and that may be why these things have changed over time. So we've shifted to what's commonly referred to as an online dream diary study. And this is where we allow the participants to dream at home. We then provide them with a link to an internet site where they can report their dreams, and we can then show them a sequence of images or targets and decoys, and then they can select the one that they think is the target. And Caroline Watt has done some excellent work on this. So this is what we were interested in. We were interested in trying to utilize a sort of home dream diary study approach. Okay? And we were particularly interested to explore whether there would be any links between that and this notion of sensory processing sensitivity, this idea, this trait of sensitivity where the individuals show this deeper level of processing, greater empathy, etc., and reactivity. And the reason for that is there's a number of findings or suggestive ideas between the highly sensitive person who has been more prone, if you like, to exhibit anomalous experiences. They experience more vivid and meaningful dreams, and they also report more altered states of consciousness. So we thought that this would be a really useful and interesting way to explore whether there are links between highly sensitive persons and whether their dream precognitive performance would be reflected in that. So it was an exploratory study. In a sense, there were two areas we wanted to explore. One was, would it be possible for people to rate or correctly rate a target image that they would see that they could dream about that they would see in the future. So this is the dream precognitive aspect. And then the second part is, would their performance on that task be related to their level of sensitivity and the subscales? It's important. There's a sort of orthogonal dimensionality to that HSP, because whilst there are those subscales of an aesthetic sensitivity and low sensory threshold and ease of excitation, which Liz has really nicely mapped out for me. There's also this sort of, the way they're scored means you get classified into the, the dandelions, the tulips and the orchids. So it's worth thinking about those things separately. So this was a pre-registered study. In fact, it's now completed. So the whole pre-registration data, everything is up on the site. A nod and of thanks to Caroline and Jim, as always, for supporting us and for holding us to account. I think this is a brilliant thing, this pre-registration. I think it really helps. Based on prior research, we did power analysis. So in order to get a reasonably good effect size and avoid the criticism of optional stopping, we said that we'd run this until we got 100 participants. The only screening procedure we had in place is that people needed to dream regularly and be able to recall their dreams, which we asked them about at the front. We used Qualtrics, a standard sort of software platform to present and collate information from individuals. We used the HSP12 scale to measure sensitivity. For the dream precognition component, we used a sequence or a selection of target images from the IAPS database, the International Affective Picture Set. These are a range of pictures that have been measured and assessed in terms of valence and arousal, whether they're positive or negative, whether they're highly arousing or not. We used only positive images that were highly arousing because there's this notion that arousing images produce better effects. We identified 44 images, put 4 to one side, and we used those in the practice trial. Of the other 40, we created 10 sets of 4 image sets, if you like, and then we matched each image set for mean valence and arousal. So we tried to make sure we controlled for things like that. There were 2 technical bits, if people are really interested. So the Qualtrics uses, I think it's a Mercian Twister random event generator to present the stimuli, and then we used an online random generator from random.org to identify the target. Now, hopefully that will make sense in a second. So the general procedure was pretty much the same. We recruited the individuals. We ran this initial screening process where we asked them if they regularly dream, recall their dreams, got them to complete the HSP12. We did take some other measures, but I'm not going to talk about those today. And then we ran 2 trials. And they were consecutive. Each trial took a week, about. And so the participants would complete a practice trial over 1 week, and then they would complete the main trial. And the idea of this is the practice trial would allow them to familiarise themselves with the procedure, sort of bed into that and make a lot of sense. And the procedure for the practice trial and the main trial was exactly the same. What would happen is the Friday before, I would email them and say, right, remember, next week you're taking part in the dream precognition study, and thank you very much, lots of contact. On the Monday, I would then send them a prompt saying, right, now remember you're taking part in the study, and what we want you to do for the next couple of nights is dream about the target that we're going to show you on Wednesday. And then we'd let them dream. Wednesday morning would come along. I would send them a link saying, thank you very much for participating in the study. This is the link. This will show you one set of those 10, one set of 4 images. What we want you to do is to rate those images from 1 to 100 in terms of how similar you think they are to what you dreamed about. In a sense, try and identify the target. So they do that, and on the Thursday, after they'd done this, that's when I went into the database. I would identify which image set they were exposed to. Then I would use the random.org random generator to identify the target. And then I would send that information back to them and then go in and score their responses. So the target was selected and scored, thank you, 1 minute afterwards. This is the most important thing. So essentially what we're saying is, what were their scores? And remember, these scores were similarity ratings from 1 to 100, in a sense like 1, no similarity at all, 100, yeah, that's exactly what I dreamed about. What you can see here is this is the scores for the target and the 3 decoys. We ran a repeated measures ANOVA. We found a marginal effect. When we compared the mean of the target to the mean of the 3 decoys, we found a very significant effect, or a significant effect, 0.25 effect size, so it's pretty good. Interestingly, when we broke this down in terms of the sensitivity categories, in terms of dandelions, tulips and orchids, we also looked at that but didn't find any differences. But what I was looking at earlier about this is you can see the distribution. Our participant sample was more skewed towards orchids than it was the others, and that might well be an interesting factor of why we didn't also find clear correlations. The only one we found was between HSP and EOE, this ease of excitation, and it was a negative correlation. This idea that the lower levels of excitation, etc., are associated with greater performance on the target. Wow, crikey, talk about speed. So, key findings. So participants were significantly more accurate at rating the target image compared to the decoys. That was a marginal ANOVA effect, albeit a significant t-test. So we do need to interpret that with caution. There was a negative association between that and ease of excitation. So I think it's suggestive that it's a positive work. It links to prior work, and it shows, at least in this instance, that this paradigm produced a really interesting effect, and I think it's something that we could take forward. It was pretty easy to do. It was sort of logistically long-winded at times, lots of contacting participants and keeping them engaged. Our engagement levels were very good. I was really pleased. We recruited, I think it was about 111 in the practice phase, and we got 101 completed the main trial. So we dropped about 9 over those weeks, and it ran across about 9 or 10 week period because it was run over cohorts. So it was pretty good, and we engaged people, and they found it really enjoyable. And there was definitely an element of fun about it as well. This notion of the negative association between ease of excitation and identifying the correct target sort of may link to this idea as well about people being of low levels of excitability, low levels of arousal, etc. And that would link with this notion that psi being a weaker signal, that it's not overshadowed by noise, etc. That I'm not going to talk too much about that. I just need to thank Bial Foundation for supporting us on this. It's grant 4820, and especially thanks to Liz and Malcolm for working on this, and of course thank you, and if you have any questions.
Wonderful, thank you.
Crikey. Any questions?
Yeah, we can take 1 or 2 questions. We're a little over time, but we're still good. Yeah.
Should be gin, really.
Thank you very much to you, David, and to the other speakers as well. I'm not a scientist. So the question I'm going to ask you might sound a little left field, and I'd be happy to hear your answer and the other speakers if there's time. I'd like to know what the big picture win is with the research that was in this section, because I'm wondering if this is a matter of proving sciability for the scientific institution, or has that already been done? I feel like it's already been done. Or is this necessary, kind of getting the profile of who is more prone to these abilities? What is the win? Is this laying the groundwork for future work and expansion, or is it proving a very primary point?
Oh, tough question. Okay, my answer is yes. Sorry, let me just caveat, because straight away I'm thinking, it proving, that's a tough, was it Sheldrake who said, science doesn't prove things, we just support hypotheses, etc. So you have to be careful there. I guess there's a number of things. We're still. I would agree. I don't think there's much. I don't think it's about us trying to sort of. I'm not really interested in convincing skeptics that psi is real. Okay, because I think if you open-mindedly, and as a scientist, I would like to think as a good scientist is critical yet open-minded, comes to the data and with an open mind looks at that, I really do think it would be impossible to walk away and think there's nothing there. So I think psi is real. I think that's a given. What we are trying to do are a number of things. We are trying to identify paradigms where we can produce those effects, or we can elicit effects, because maybe it's not about, this notion of, people as machines and they just produce. It's, trying to elicit those subtle effects in a sort of continuous replicable way, and at the same time, of course, because we are governed by a whole range of other logistical factors that kick in, trying to identify some of the personality aspects, the individual aspects, the belief aspects that would help us identify better ways to elicit those effects. Hopefully that answers. That's a slightly long-winded answer, probably slightly longer-winded than yes, anyway. But hopefully it answers the question.
Okay, I think we're going to have to stop there because we're quite a ways over time. You're looking disappointed, Christine.
Well, ask anyway.
Can you
ask me at coffee.
Make it quick?
Oh, make it quick. It's all right. I'm happy to take the question because I noticed the coffee said something like there was.
And then we'll negotiate with Jake whether we can save our coffee break.
Okay.
It can be a quick question, and I may have missed something, but I think it looked like the tulips did better than the really high scorers. So that's interesting. And what does that suggest to you for future?
No is the answer to that. They didn't. Oops, there. Well, okay. Okay, sorry, I'm going to be a pedant. Okay, yes, the number 31 is higher than the number 29 and 22, whatever it is. But I did run an analysis across those, and there's no difference. And it may well be because of the difference in sample size, and that's a factor, definitely. And I'm just very cautious of over-interpreting what I would perceive. Literally, I perceive that as random noise. Now, that doesn't mean there's nothing there, because I think, as I said, our sample was slightly skewed towards orchids. What's interesting is, when you look at the orchids, there tends to be a more sort of general, consistent finding that their target ratings seem to be higher than the other three decoys, which is more consistent than the other ones. And it may well be that, that we could run this. I mean, sorry to sound like a typical scientist, but, we need to run more research, and we certainly need to replicate this. And it would be nice as well to get a broader range of, tulips, dandelions, and orchids, a less skewed distribution, to see if we could, maybe even use that as a predictor for their performance. I do think there are good questions. I don't think my data is sufficiently robust to allow.
Okay, I think we're going to have to stop there. Thank you for confirming that parapsychologists are typical scientists. That's good to know.
I don't think there's a difference. We're all scientists.
Yes. And let's thank all the speakers in the session once more.